Hello, everyone. I said that I was going to do a follow-up. This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. I met with some Boeing engineers yesterday. They gave me this hat, and they said, Daryl, you deserve this because of what you're doing here, exposing this mess that nobody knows that for 22 years, Boeing gave up their inspection for source inspection to a piece of paper, an AS9100 certificate. You give us your certificate, which is for aerospace. AS9100 is an ISO standard. Just send us your certificate and send us your parts so we don't have to send inspection there. I'm sure that Boeing will probably tell you a different bunch of bullshit, but I want to tell you this. We sent our CV in. We want to assist them, cure their escapes. And I heard David Calhoun, the CEO over here, I heard him say on an interview that we're looking into that. That will never happen again on that door. But you can't, Dave, concentrate just on the door mechanics and engineering. You have to concentrate on the whole aircraft, on how that affects everything, not just a certain part. I think you may have been slow with words, but here we go. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. This also goes to Nick and also Clem. I appreciate the company as well. Again, my name is Daryl Guberman, the CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, and there are two things that I want you to remember. One is from Thomas Paine. It is impossible to comprehend the moral mischief, if I may so express it, that mental lying has produced in our society. When a man has so far corrupted and prostituted the chastity of their mind as to subscribe their professional beliefs to things they do not believe, they have prepared themselves the commission for every other crime. And also, the truth will set you free, but not until it is finished with you. The truth will set you free, but not until it is finished with you. And I will say this again for those of you who travel a lot on planes. In Judaism, there is a saying, if you can save one life, you have saved the world eternal. And that is what I do here. We have from United Airlines, we have a Gerald Laderman, and we also have Scott Kirby, the CEO. We also have Kirkland Donald, the comprehensive quality review guy for 737. We also have Patrick Shanahan, who was the Deputy Secretary of Defense during Trump, and also he is now the CEO of Spirit Aerosystems, which is accredited by Intertech, and I'm sure it's accredited by the American National Standards Institute / the American National Accreditation Board. Mr. Laderman, though, he said something funny, and I showed this to you before I let you listen to this. The loss of experienced personnel during the COVID-19 pandemic is a blame for Boeing's recent string of problems. The only problem is that Boeing demanded of their workers you had to get shot, you had to get a vaccine. And if you pull back the skin of that onion, you find out that Pfizer and Pfizer, yes, and Johnson & Johnson both sit on ANSI ANAB's board, right over by Boeing, right over by the FDA, FAA, DOJ, DOT, etc. So I am going to go into this briefly. How can a regulator regulate a regulator? I'm not going to go into fact about ANSI ANAB, their accreditation body. Maybe we may breeze across it. But I want to show you this, ladies and gentlemen, because I think you need to know. ANSI ANAB, our underwriters, the American National Standards Institute and the American National Crediting Board, are underwriters for the IAF, International Accreditation Forum, which is incorporated in Delaware, and also ILAC, the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. We have Boeing here. On Boeing's portal, it states, must be ANSI ANAB. On the portal right now, as it stands, it says ANSI ASQ, National Crediting Board ANAB. ASQ at one time, American Society for Quality, which sits on ANSI's board, which sits over by the ANAB. They at one time owned ANAB 50%, and ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, owned ANAB 50%. I was invited in 2016. Well, actually, I was like, here's Dave Levy. I gave a speech in 2013. We had Mr. Dave Levy, Region 3 Director, basically say, he said, there is no restriction on you doing business unaccredited or accredited. And as I said before, ANAB has no problem with what you're doing. In fact, we support you, sir. Absolutely. And then in 2016, Mr. Randy Doty gave us the invitation here, as you can see. He said, we can join either ANSI or ANAB, and it's all voluntary. It's not voluntary, as you will see on Boeing Supplier Portal, as a matter of fact. It is far from that. But in 2015, Randy handed over leadership, of the IAF to this communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who at that time was also the chairman, or actually chief executive on the China National Accreditation Services. And also, he's mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, to take our data. On top of that, in 2017, we have him standing there in Wuhan, China, issuing a laboratory cert, even though specialists from the United States came to visit the lab. The scientists there in the laboratory are basically crying to the specialists that came to visit them from the US, saying that we need more technicians that are qualified. He issued a certificate to an unqualified lab, if you read everything in back. But you know what? I will tell you this. You have a Miss Pamela Sale, who's the laboratory vice president at the time, under deposition, basically say this. Said that, right over here, one of the issues is that there's no commonly agreed upon set of standards that a forensics labs around the country or even the world, forensic, phlebotomy, bio-level 4 lab like the laboratory in Wuhan, China, have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines that labs choose to follow or not. So basically, you have a system that this guy issued an accreditation into that is faulty. It is out of control. And it's stated that by Pamela Sale. So I was invited. I did not go because, look, we've got a cybersecurity issue right over here. A communist Chinese national leading an American company in Delaware. And they have places, there's one part IAF up in Minnesota, whatever, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and you have another one up in Canada, and their home base is in Australia. Nevertheless, it's incorporated in Delaware, so it is an American company. We were invited. I said no. We kept on going, and I've had, during my first part in this business over 13 years, I had issues, and now we know why. Boeing mandates, this is a mandate on their supplier portal of ANSI, ANAP, and internationally equivalent. When you pull back the skin, there's about 100 and some odd accreditation bodies on ANSI's, on the IAF. And remember, the IAF is incorporated in Delaware, and ANSI, ANAP are underwriters, which means they take full legal responsibility. You have a situation where you have Iran and Pakistan, who is the international equivalent. Yes, there could be other ones, Rajasthan, whatever, Accredia, Italy, whatever you want to do. But I take these because they're the most volatile in the entire situation. They're in the IAF. They're equivalent to ANSI, ANAB accreditation. And when they say on Boeing that it could be, so sad, when they say that ANSI, ANAB are internationally equivalent, you have it right there. Boeing, of course, I told you, sits on ANSI's board, right over by ANAB, right over by 7 different registrars that ANAB, that Boeing uses for its suppliers and all that, other than there's about 60 registrars all accredited by ANAB and others that fit in the IF. Any accreditation body under the IF banner, that's another reason why I didn't want to do it, is equivalent to ANSI, ANAB. But they got caught fudging documentation, You cannot make this up. Of their steel manufacturers, also, Kobe Steel got caught fudging, and so did Boeing. Most recently, again, in their composite facility for Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey, they had an issue that basically, they were fudging documentation once again. And it's terrible. When you look at this and go over this whole mess, you say to yourself, that's really bad. But the worst thing is the Boeing Bulletin from 2002 that basically stated over here, when it says surveys, it's actually audits. They don't have to do it anymore because as long as you're AS9100, ANSI, ANAB accredited, or internationally equivalent, just send us your piece of paper, then you can send us parts, and we don't have to audit you anymore. For 22 years that's going on. And now this is what I mean. How can a regulator regulate a regulator? In 2009, this is to educate David Calhoun once again and the staff back there, the only one who's telling the fact is that about quality is when you have Patrick Shanahan, and it's going to be down in the description, everything's going to be down there. You can look it up, you can tap on the article. He said when asked about the F-35, he said it is, it is fucked up. He's the only one that's talking about an ANSI ANAB accredited system. And after, listen to this is the best. After their 801st F-35 being produced by Lockheed Martin, they still have escapes. Escapes, ladies and gentlemen, is another word to say it's fucked up, meaning that they have discrepancies that may cause loss of aircraft, loss of pilot, everything. On ANSI sits the FAA. You find anything wrong with it, you have FAA, Boeing, you have the Department of Transportation too that sits on ANSI's board. So I'm going to ask you again, ladies and gentlemen, business owners. I went into New York yesterday, and once again, I thank you guys that I met yesterday, giving me their Boeing hat. I appreciate that. That's kindness of you. I really mean that. You have Boeing, and you have the FAA sitting together. How can a regulator watch over a regulator? And I will say this again. David Calhoun was on the board in 2009 when the FAA went in and gave the authority to be an FAA regulator. Once he was made a CEO, Dennis Muhlenberg was gone, not gone by that time, but he was still there as a CEO. My personal viewpoint as a CEO, I would stay off my golf cart, roll up my sleeves, go into the factory and be the main cheerleader, because that should have been a solemn association and a solemn dispensation giving you FAA authority to sign off your aircraft. The job was not done, as we can see, and I mark my word that these accumulated tolerances of being lackadaisical in quality, you can hear it in Dave Calhoun when he said, oh, we're checking out the door, it's never going to happen with the door. You just can't say that. It's not going to happen with the aircraft, Dave. You just can't focus in on one part, because then you have problems throughout the aircraft. My telephone number is 203-556-1493. And this is part 2 of Can a Regulator Regulate a Regulator? My name is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, 203-556-1493, or Daryl, Daryl, TQRS at yahoo.com. And I don't mean to shame you, Dave, but I know that if I was the CEO of Boeing and the FAA came in 2009, even sitting on the board, I would go down there, roll up your sleeves, and let these people know, let the manufacturers know how proud that moment is for a federal agency to give you federal agency status. And now you're trying to clean it up. It's not going to happen. I've already sent you my CV, and I look forward to hearing from you. Again, 203-556-1493, and board of directors there. If you want somebody to lead, I shall do that, because that's what you need here. You need people who are going to roll up their sleeves, forget about the cigar and the martini and the golf cart, and do the job and get it done. There's people's lives at stake.